Before the audience even saw a single scene of Omniscient Reader, the prophecy, a different kind of narrative had already formed, and that narrative was not about the plot, not about the direction, and not even about the scale of the project, but about casting itself, because whenever a well-known character from a popular webtoon is assigned to a globally recognized actor, the audience begins to construct an internal version of that character long before the performance is revealed, and in the case of Yoo Jung-hyuk, that internal version is particularly rigid, emotionally cold, brutally efficient, psychologically damaged, and defined by an almost mechanical relationship with survival, which means that the actor stepping into this role is not creating a character from zero, but negotiating with an already existing expectation that is deeply embedded in the fanbase. This creates a situation where Lee Min-ho is not simply judged on acting ability, but on alignment with an imagined version of the character, and that imagined version is often more extreme than what a film adaptation can realistically deliver, because a webtoon allows for hundreds of chapters of gradual development, repeated cycles, internal monologues, and detailed emotional breakdowns, whereas a film must compress all of that into a limited runtime, inevitably simplifying certain elements. Which leads to a gap between expectation and execution, and that gap is where most of the audience tension appears. What makes this especially complex is that Lee Min-ho's established screen identity is built around control, composure, and a certain level of emotional readability, whereas Yoo Jung-hyuk, as written in the original material, operates closer to emotional opacity, unpredictability, and even discomfort, meaning that the actor must not only adapt to the role, but also partially suppress the qualities that made him successful in the first place, which is a much more difficult transformation than simply adding new traits to an existing style. When early reactions described the performance as close but not fully there, what they were actually identifying was this mismatch between expectation intensity and adaptation limitation, because the audience was not rejecting Lee Min-ho's interpretation outright, but rather sensing that the portrayal did not fully cross the threshold into the extreme version of the character that they had constructed internally. And this is a subtle but crucial distinction, because it means the issue is not failure, but incomplete transformation. From an industry perspective, this highlights a structural challenge in modern adaptations, where casting a major star brings visibility and commercial strength, but also increases expectation rigidity, making it harder for the performance to be accepted unless it fully commits to a radical reinterpretation, and for Lee Min-ho, this becomes a strategic crossroads, because future adaptation roles will require not just accuracy, but boldness, not just alignment, but willingness to disrupt audience expectation rather than gently approach it. So the real story of Omniscient Reader is not simply whether the film succeeded or failed, but how it exposed the mechanics of expectation in 2025, where casting itself becomes the first act of the performance, and where the audience's imagination can be just as powerful as anything shown on screen, and sometimes even more difficult to satisfy.